Thank you, Adesha. Almost looking like me there. All right, so Chris Akiri, let's get back to this. I'm just reading through comments of a lot of people here, and quite interesting. But first of all, I think I should let me just let you conclude your thoughts on what you were saying initially before we just take a comment or two from people who are here.
So I said it's too political for my liking.
Too political?
Yeah, for my liking. Oh. You know, the way it carries on.
Does it have any bearing on the procedure for his ousting?
I'm through with the CBN Act and his removal and appointment. I'm just saying that as CBN governor, he is too political. Now, because the way he carries on, it's like you never know whether he's already the emir of Kano, or whether he's gone in for the governorship of Kano already, you know, as CBN governor, you know, all the donations he makes, you know, in Kano and his environs to the university.
Will those count if this matter were to be in court?
No, they will not count. But then, you see, if they were illegal donations, for example, another area is that, you see, last week, I think it was last week, the president was reported to have visited some of the traditional rulers in this country, starting with the Northwest. And then after that one, he came to the Southwest, visiting the Alafin of Oyo, visiting the Olubat of Ibadan, Army of Ife, and so on and so forth. A day after the president left Alafin Palace, our governor Sanusi was there at Alafin of Oyo's palace to go and visit the Alafin of Oyo. All these things. Then you ask, what is this? What is this? Is this governor of the CBN?
Let's look at some further.
So those are just
what wonders. I mean, I think everyone would like to join the government in fighting corruption if they're really going to go about it in the way everybody will appreciate, even though it's tough to please everybody. But when they perceive some level of inconsistency, there will be questions. For instance, the former Minister of Aviation.
Yes.
We do know the hue and cry about what it was about that alleged car scam. It was on the floor of the House of Reps. Then the president said he was going to set up a committee. We don't know what became of that. I think I might have missed it. But there was no suspension until she was then relieved of her appointment. So isn't that demonstrative of some sort of inconsistency in coming to equity?
No. Well, you see, when you still minister, under Section 147 of the Constitution, for example, the president has powers to appoint ministers, even if subject to the confirmation of the same Senate. Now, but unlike the CBN governor, now he has the right to hire and fire.
And what about looking at it from the perspective of our fight against corruption?
Yes. Now, you are looking at it from what angle of vision? What are you...
From our fight against corruption, the perception that people have out there, they want to see consistency.
Yeah.
If there are so many questions about the then Minister of Aviation,
yes,
where there was no suspension, while those allegations were made, and they were on paper, in print, but there's an allegation here now from the FRC.
In the case of the minister, that's what I was just telling you. In the case of the minister, there was no need for any suspension.
Really? Why?
No need for any suspension, because the president...
No need for any investigation?
Investigation, of course, yes. Investigation will take place. We must have set up panels to look into these allegations against that minister and other ministers, and then the report will now land on his table. He would read, if convinced that the allegations were proved, then he could take action, quite unlike the governor's case, where he cannot take action just like that, because the appointment of the governor of the CBN has what we call statutory flavor. It has statutory flavor, whereas the appointment of a minister has no statutory flavor. The government, I beg your pardon?
I was just about to say that you've acknowledged that there is a difference in the sense that the Senate still comes in again. We're just asking.
Yes.
That was done for a reason, don't you think?
Yes, because...
Why do you think that was done? Why was that done?
So a measure of autonomy has to be given to the CBN. The Senate has to come in again because they don't want the president to hire and fire the governor of the CBN in the same way as he can hire and fire a minister.
Do you think then that the powers to suspend,
yes,
applies to the CBN governor?
Whether it applies?
Yes,
of course, yes.
On the back of this particular,
for example, before the president before he can make any recommendation to the Senate, there has to be a kind of probe. There has to be, he has to make efforts to justify anything that has to do with relieving the governor of his own job. To do that, he has to set up some kind of panel to look into the allegations leveled against him. And there are legion. He has to look into these allegations, these panels, and before the panels can look into these allegations, which will then produce a report that the president is going to present before the Senate, the man has to go.
The things you just said,
and like I told you, suspension does not mean dismissal, neither does it mean termination of appointment.
You just said, sir, that you think that the CBN governor, suspended CBN governor, was too political.
Yes.
Do you think that this politicalness of his,
yes,
in quote,
yes,
also offended some politicians?
Well, yeah, definitely it must have ruffled feathers, in the political landscape. Yeah, definitely. But that is not the reason why the president wants to go to the Senate to remove this person. Do
you think that he could be a victim of this offense that he's caused those politicians?
No. Well, you see, it cannot. Look, if you are said to be, unaware, and you decided to inject yourself with some lethal potion, now then you have committed suicide. I mean, you have or you are trying to. And you died in the process of injecting yourself with that dangerous, fluid. Then you have committed suicide. Yeah, people may have been offended here and there. Yeah, there is no doubt about that because the way you have been going. But then he now went to do so many things. Because
just a moment, Mr.
No, but I'm crying.
Just a moment. A host of people would say that some of the things that Mr. Sanusi did were out in the open, and that these donations he made to the universities, to Boko Haram, victims of Boko Haram, both in Madala and in Kano. Some of those things were out in the open, and that the FRSC did not need to comment that if the president had issues with them, all he had to do was query them.
Yeah, okay, but I'm sure he can query. He can query.
We're talking about query, Mr. Akiri. Yes. I think I wanted us to look at some issues here, like timeline, because by tomorrow it will be exactly a year that this whole thing started.
Yes.
I think it started on February 26th last year, where the CBN governor sent Mr. President the audited accounts of the CBN for the year ended December 31st, 2012.
Yes.
So it all started a year ago.
Okay.
And in April of that same year, the president sent the audited accounts to the FRCN.
Yes.
And asked for an advice.
Yes.
And while that was going on, in May also of that year, Mr. President wrote the CBN governor asking him to explain some of the issues raised following the report by the FRCN.
Yes.
And I think the CBN received that particular letter May 20th of last year.
Yes.
And in June, the president also said, he was asked to renew the auditor's maybe contract to look at it, but he said specifically, keep in view, that's the document I have here showing that KIV, I'm still looking at the audit report.
Yes.
So back and forth it's been on. But if you look at it, now that we're getting a year now, we're getting to see all of the suspension and all of this talk. I said yesterday, he did say, well, it's possible that he can also return as a CBN governor if
because it's a suspension.
All of this.
Yes, because it's a suspension. And don't forget, if I may just come in there, you see, when the account was submitted, and then there were queries by the president, and which the CBN governor or the board answered, and which were not satisfactory, and so on, and then they talked of the auditors, whether they should renew the terms of the auditors. The CBN Act, under which the governor was appointed, states unequivocally that the auditors of the bank, when I mean the bank now, the CBN, must be appointed with reference to the president. Now, when Ernst and Young were appointed, they were appointed unilaterally by the CBN, acting without reference to the president. They appointed Ernst and Young unilaterally, and then they fixed their remuneration.
How was it supposed to
at
happen?
400 million naira per annum without reference to the president. You see, these are some of those things. There are so many issues that have to be probed.
But that's the independence of the CBN.
No, that's not independent, but it's not stated in, you see, when you say independence of the CBN wants to be independent. Not that it is already independent. They had, I understand, they had a bill wanting to be autonomous at that time, but the bill never came to light.
Mr. Kiri,
so you see, they are not independent.
So, Mr.
They are independent only to the extent of the provisions of the CBN Act 2007.
Mr. Kiri,
No, they can't go beyond that.
just a moment.
Where they say something must be done with must be referred to the president before action could be taken. Now, and it is not, that's what the CBN Act is doing, and it is not done, and it is done without reference to the president, then there is a violation. There is an infraction of the law.
Mr. Akiri, some people want to, one of our viewers want to know if the president can suspend the INEC chairman.
Yeah, of course, he can suspend the INEC chairman, because the INEC chairman was appointed almost the same way as the CBN governor was appointed. Now, he was appointed subject to the confirmation of the Senate. Therefore, if he's going to be removed, because if it's not like that, then the president will just say, oh, you allowed an opposing party to win an election in a particular state. Oh, now not my party, so you are fired. And that's why his own termination of appointment or dismissal has to be referred to the Senate as well.
Yes, but you know, looking at some of, if allegations are leveled against him and he's asked to step aside, do you think that he can be suspended? That's basically the question, because that's the same process that the CBN governor is going through now.
I mean, that question is, so how can you make recommendations to the Senate to say, look, this person is not good again. He has violated the law under which he was appointed for the umpteenth time, and therefore let him go. Muster your 2/3 and let him go. How do you do that without any probe, without investigating the allegations? And how do you investigate the allegations without his suspension? No, I mean, did you hear what I said?
Yes, of course.
How do you investigate allegations without his suspension?
Mr. Kiri, just a moment. Do you think that, you know, if it gets to the Senate and 2/3 majority cannot be mustered, what becomes of the fate of a CBN governor?
If they cannot muster 2/3 majority, he goes back. Because nothing can be done to him without the Senate. They must be able to muster 2/3 majority of the Senate before anything can happen. That's what I think the president was saying yesterday. Either that the Senate is not able to muster 2/3 majority, or in fact, when the allegations that are being probed, when they turn out to be, not realistic, or that just maybe some of peccadillos, if you like, very slight thing that anybody could have done.
Okay.
And it goes back because it's just a suspension. Anyway.
Right. Okay, we have to thank you for coming on this morning. Mr. Chris Akiri is a legal practitioner and the chairman, editorial board of National Daily Newspapers. We're back in just a moment. Please join us again.